Hi everybody, my name is Shanth Enjeti, and this is Shanth Enjeti Art, and I want to show you guys something that I learned from one of my best teachers in the world, and someone who I revere greatly by the name of Brian Stelfreeze. So this is going to be 5-minute perspective lesson, so I'm going to break down some basic rules. First of all, let's talk about the eye line. That eye line, you know that line that you always draw right in the middle? And you say, what is that line for? What's that about? Well, that is how high your eyes are off the ground. That's why it's called perspective. So instead of calling it a horizon line, let's start calling it a eye height. Because the second you call it eye height, you start talking about something like measurements. So in this case, I'm going to give it an eye height of 3 feet. And at 3 feet, I'm going to put in to this space a world of characters, a world of people who are 6 feet tall. And we're going to go over what happens when 6 feet tall people get put into a perspective situation like this. So at 3 feet, what's going to happen to somebody who's 6 feet tall? Well, that means that line is going to intersect them at wherever 3 feet is on them, no matter how far away we are, because that's how high our eyes are. And that line is 3 feet everywhere, going off into infinity. So here's what's going to happen. Here's a figure that's 6 feet tall in a 3 feet situation. Runs right through the center of them. Here's another figure, 6 feet tall in a 3 foot situation. Runs right through the center of them. Here's another figure in a 6 feet situation. Runs right through the center of them. Here's another figure in a 3 foot situation. Runs right through the center of them. That's how it's always going to be. So if you've got a character in that situation who's 6 feet tall, it's always going to go right through the middle of them. So what do I do with the ruler? How do I put buildings in here? Well, you put a point anywhere on that line, because that's where that vanishing point's always going to be, somewhere on that line. And no matter what scale you randomly put these figures in, they'll always be in perspective. Notice I didn't put a lot of thought into hitting the vanishing point, but I didn't put a lot of thought into where these figures were in this space. I just knew that that line would split them in half no matter where they were. That's how perspective works. So let's do the same thing. Let's flip this over, and we're going to do the same thing with 6 feet. What's going to happen? Bunch of 6 feet tall figures in a 6 foot tall circumstance, and you're going to see that the top of everybody's head, no matter how big they are in space, is going to touch that line, because that line is 6 feet. So of course, that's where all these figures are going to be. Doesn't matter where you put them. So you put a point on that line anywhere, because vanishing point's always going to be on that line, and no matter where you've randomly put those figures, they're always going to be in perfect perspective. So, get rid of that. Now let's take a look at one that's actually pretty hard. We'll do 12 feet. And I remember to this day when Brian Stelfreeze showed me this, it blew my mind. All you have to do with a 12-foot horizon line is draw a figure the same height as the distance down you go to, because 2 6-foot tall figures will get to 12 feet. So as long as this distance is the same as the height of the figure, you're good to go. And you can do that anywhere. It doesn't matter how far down you arbitrarily go, as long as that distance from there to there is the same as the distance from there to there, it's always going to work. So we put a point there, 1, 2, 3, 4, and those figures are always going to look like they are in perfect perspective. And that's how perspective works. And if you were to do it at 0 feet, which is a bit easy, all that means is your figures, no matter what height they are always going to be touching that line, even if they are gigantic. And that right there is perspective in 5 minutes.